I never thought I'd be pushed to the bottom of the corporate ladder to learn a lesson. They stripped me of my title, my dignity, my team, everything I'd built over 7 years at Harrison Dynamics. They wanted to break me, to watch me crumble under the weight of their power games. But when they thought they'd successfully humiliated me, they had no idea they were the ones about to learn the most painful lesson of their lives. This is how I turned their arrogance into their downfall. My name is Rachel Morgan, and until 3 months ago, I believed hard work and competence were enough to succeed in corporate America. At 34, I was a mid-level manager at Harrison Dynamics, a financial technology giant that prided itself on disrupting traditional banking. From our gleaming 40-story tower in downtown Chicago, we sold digital payment solutions to Fortune 500 companies, promising them the future while quietly bleeding them dry with hidden fees and locked-in contracts. I joined Harrison straight out of Ohio State, young and hungry, ready to prove that a girl from Columbus could make it in the big city. For 7 years, I climbed the ladder methodically: analyst, senior analyst, team lead, then finally manager of strategic accounts. My division handled our biggest clients, the ones whose logos we plastered on our website to attract more prey. I was good at my job, maybe too good. The office was exactly what you'd expect from a tech company trying to look progressive while harboring a soul from the 1950s. Open floor plans and kombucha on tap couldn't hide the reality. The C-suite was a boys' club, and they liked it that way. Every executive meeting looked like a country club gathering, white men in their 50s, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, making decisions over golf that affected thousands of employees they'd never bothered to learn the names of. Mark Halstead epitomized everything wrong with Harrison Dynamics. As vice president of operations, he rolled through intimidation disguised as leadership. 6'3", with silver hair, he probably paid more to maintain than I spent on rent. Mark had that particular brand of confidence that comes from never being told no. He'd inherited his position from a college roommate connection, climbed higher through strategic backstabbing, and now sat comfortable in his corner office, believing his MBA from 20 years ago made him infallible. The culture at Harrison was toxic in that insidious way that never quite crossed into lawsuit territory. Women were encouraged to be team players, which meant accepting interrupted presentations and stolen ideas. Minorities were valued for their diverse perspectives, as long as those perspectives aligned with what leadership already believed. And anyone who challenged the status quo was labeled not culture fit, corporate speak for troublemaker. I'd watch colleagues get ground down by this machine. Sarah from accounting, brilliant with numbers, quit after her 4th passed-over promotion. James from IT, who designed our entire security infrastructure, was let go for redundancy after training his replacement, Mark's nephew. Every departure was followed by the same playbook: a company-wide email about pursuing new opportunities and a happy hour where we pretended everything was fine. But I was different, or so I thought. I had the numbers, the client relationships, the track record. My division's revenue had grown 40% year over year. My client retention rate was the highest in the company. I was untouchable. That delusion shattered during the Q3 planning meeting. In a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, 23 executives and senior managers gathered around a mahogany table that cost more than most people's cars, ready to nod along to whatever Mark proposed. He was 3 slides into his presentation about optimizing resource allocation, corporate speak for firing people, when I noticed the error. Not just a small mistake, but a fundamental flaw in his analysis that would cost us millions if implemented. The kind of error that should have been caught by any competent leader, but wasn't. Because Mark surrounded himself with yes-men who valued their paychecks over their integrity, I should have kept quiet, should have sent a carefully worded email after the meeting, cushioned with praise and deference. Should have played the game, but I didn't. Mark, I think there's an issue with the projection model on slide 3. The room went silent. 22 heads swiveled toward me like synchronized swimmers. Mark's laser pointer froze mid-air, its red dot trembling slightly on the screen. His jaw tightened, that telltale sign I'd seen before when someone dared question him. I'm sorry, Rachel, but we've thoroughly vetted these numbers with the finance team. His voice carried that patronizing tone reserved for explaining simple concepts to children. Perhaps you could review them after the meeting and email any concerns. But I'd already opened Pandora's box. My laptop was connected to my phone, where I'd pulled up the real data during his presentation. The problem is your baseline assumptions. You're calculating cost savings based on Q2 performance, but you're not accounting for the Goldman contract we're about to lose. That's $30 million in recurring revenue gone next quarter. Mark's face flushed red. The Goldman renewal is practically guaranteed. No, it's not. I stood up, something women at Harrison rarely did during meetings. I spoke with their procurement team yesterday. They're switching to Apex systems. We've been undercut by 15%, and they're tired of our service delays. That's speculation. It's fact. I pulled up the email on my phone and projected it onto the secondary screen. Here's the confirmation from Goldman's VP of Operations. Notice the timestamp, 8:47 this morning. The room erupted in whispers. Several executives pulled out their phones, frantically checking their emails. Mark's carefully constructed narrative was crumbling, and everyone could see it. Furthermore, I continued, adrenaline overriding common sense. Your optimization plan cuts headcount and customer success by 20%. Without Goldman, we need more support staff, not less, to retain our remaining enterprise clients. Your model would trigger a cascade of departures. Mark slammed his hand on the table. This is neither the time nor place. Then when is? I shot back. After we've already laid off essential staff? After we've lost another dozen clients? You're making decisions based on wishful thinking, not data. The silence that followed was deafening. I'd just committed corporate suicide, and everyone knew it. You didn't challenge Mark Halstead publicly. You certainly didn't prove him incompetent in front of the entire leadership team. David Brennan, our CEO, cleared his throat. Thank you for your passionate input, Rachel. Mark, perhaps we should table this discussion until we can verify all the numbers. The meeting dissolved into chaos. People scattered like roaches when the lights come on, desperate to distance themselves from the blast radius. Only Mark remained, standing at the head of the table, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge. My office. Now. He didn't wait for my response. The walk to his corner office felt like a death march. His assistant, Patricia, gave me a pitying look as I passed. She'd seen this before, the summoning of the condemned. Mark's office was a shrine to his ego. Harvard MBA diploma prominently displayed, photos with politicians and celebrities, a putting green in the corner. He didn't offer me a seat. You think you're clever? He circled behind his desk, a predator marking territory. You think embarrassing me makes you leadership material? I think accurate data makes for better decisions. He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You really don't get it, do you? This isn't about data, it's about respect. Chain of command. Knowing your place. My place is protecting this company's interests. Your place is wherever I say it is. He leaned forward, his coffee breath washing over me. You want to play hardball? Fine, let me explain how this works. You just declared war on someone who's been playing this game since before you graduated high school. I've buried careers for less than what you just did. I stood my ground. Is that a threat? It's a promise. He smiled. And it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. You think you're untouchable because of your numbers? Watch me teach you how replaceable everyone is. The next 2 days were quiet. Too quiet. No emails from Mark's office, no follow-up on the Goldman situation. Even my own team seemed nervous around me, like I had some contagious disease. Then, Friday afternoon, HR called. Rachel, could you come to conference room B? Bring your laptop. I knew before I walked in. The setup was perfect. HR director, legal representative, and Mark sitting there with a manufactured look of regret. The paperwork was already printed. Effective immediately. You're being reassigned to supervisor of regional accounts. The HR director read from her script. This is part of a strategic reorganization to better utilize your tactical skills. Regional accounts, the corporate equivalent of Siberia. A demotion so severe it was almost artistic in its cruelty. I'd be reporting to Tom Martinez, someone who'd been my peer just yesterday. My salary would be adjusted accordingly. My team would be distributed to others. My office would become a cubicle on the third floor. This is retaliation, I said flatly. Mark's fake concern deepened. Rachel, I actually fought for you to keep a position here at all. The board wanted termination after your unprofessional display. Consider this a learning opportunity, a chance to develop the humility and respect necessary for leadership. A learning opportunity, a lesson in knowing my place. They'd orchestrated this perfectly, technically legal, professionally devastating. I could fight it and lose, or accept it and be broken. Mark leaned back, savoring his victory. Welcome to the real world, Rachel. Sometimes the best data doesn't win. Sometimes it's just about who has the power. Monday morning arrived like a punch to the gut. My keycard no longer worked on the executive floor. The security guard, Marcus, who'd greeted me warmly for years, couldn't meet my eyes as he explained I'd need to use the main elevators now. New access levels, he mumbled, both of us knowing exactly what this meant. The third floor was corporate purgatory. Fluorescent lights hummed with a frequency that seemed designed to trigger migraines. The cubicles were gray fabric walls that absorbed sound and hope in equal measure. My new workspace was a 6x6 box between the bathroom and the break room, ensuring a constant stream of traffic and the permanent smell of microwaved fish. Tom Martinez was waiting at my cubicle, barely containing his glee. Tom, who'd spent 3 years copying my strategies and presenting them as his own. Tom, who'd failed upward through a combination of golf buddies and taking credit for his team's work. Now my boss. Rachel, welcome to Regional Accounts. His enthusiasm was obscene. I've already set up your first assignments, mostly cold calls and database cleanup. Got to start somewhere, right? Database cleanup. I'd been managing $50 million contracts. And now I was fixing typos in spreadsheets. The humiliation was surgical in its precision. The morning email announcement was worse. Strategic reorganization was the subject line. My demotion was buried in corporate speak, but everyone could read between the lines. Rachel Morgan had been put in her place. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with texts, some sympathetic, most just gossiping. The corporate vultures were already circling. By lunch, I understood the full scope of my destruction. Former team members averted their eyes in the hallway. People I'd mentored suddenly had urgent calls when I approached. Janet from marketing, who'd cried in my office during her divorce, walked past me like I was invisible. The corporate plague was contagious, and I was patient zero. I ate lunch alone in my car, parked in the far corner of the garage where no one could see me cry. 7 years of excellence, destroyed in one meeting. My reputation, my relationships, my career, all casualties of challenging Mark Halstead's ego. The afternoon was worse. Tom had scheduled a team integration meeting where I had to sit with 5 junior associates, all at least 10 years younger than me, while he explained my new responsibilities: processing expense reports, updating client contact information, following up on overdue invoices under $10,000. Tasks that interns complained about. Rachel brings a wealth of experience, Tom announced, his smirk barely concealed. I'm sure you'll all learn so much from her. Attention to detail. One of the associates, Brad, fresh out of college with an unearned confidence, actually asked, "Weren't you in senior management? What happened?" The room went quiet. Tom's smile widened. Rachel's taking on a more hands-on role. Sometimes we all need to remember the fundamentals. Right. Rachel? I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to tell them all how Tom had begged me for help with the Peterson account just last month. Instead, I smiled and nodded. Absolutely. Fundamentals are important. That evening, I sat in my apartment, staring at my laptop. My LinkedIn still showed my old title. Friends from other companies were congratulating me on recent wins I'd posted about. They had no idea I'd been professionally executed. My phone rang. Mom, calling from Ohio. Sweetie, how's work? Did you get that promotion you mentioned? I couldn't tell her. Couldn't admit that her daughter, the pride of the family, the first one to make it in the corporate world, had been demoted to data entry. Still in discussions, Mom, you know how these things go. Well, they'd be crazy not to promote you. You work so hard. After I hung up, I opened my banking app. The salary reduction would hit next pay period. 30% cut. My downtown apartment, the one symbol of my success, would have to go. The car payment would be tight. 7 years of climbing, destroyed in 72 hours. I pulled up my resume, started updating it, then stopped. Who would hire me now? Word travels fast in Chicago's finance tech circles. Mark would ensure I was radioactive. Any reference check would come with whispered warnings about my attitude problems and inability to work within structures. Wednesday brought fresh humiliation. My old office had been given to Derek, one of Mark's golf buddies who'd been imported from a failing startup. I had to watch him move in my awards, my client photos, my 7 years of memories. While I organized spreadsheets in my cube, the worst part was the pity. Assistants who used to schedule my meetings now spoke to me in soft, careful tones, like I might shatter. The cafeteria staff gave me extra portions, a kindness that somehow made everything worse. Even the building janitor, Roberto, patted my shoulder one evening and said, "Sometimes the good ones get knocked down. Miss, doesn't mean they stay down." By Thursday, the psychological warfare had escalated. Tom scheduled me for an improvement plan meeting where I had to detail how I would elevate my performance in my new role. Mark was there, sitting in the corner, silent but present, a reminder of who really orchestrated this. "I need to see more enthusiasm. Rachel." Tom lectured, reading from obviously prepared notes. "Your attitude affects team morale." My attitude, not my destroyed career, not my public humiliation. My attitude was the problem. That night, I sat in my empty apartment. I'd started packing, knowing the inevitable was coming, and felt something shift. The tears stopped. The self-pity evaporated. In its place, something harder crystallized. They wanted to teach me a lesson about power, about knowing my place. They'd succeeded. But they'd also taught me something else. In their arrogance, they'd made a critical error. They'd left me alive, wounded, humiliated, destroyed, but alive. And someone with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous person in any organization. I opened my laptop and began to type. Not a resume, not a resignation letter, a plan. The revelation came at 2 a.m. on a Friday, 3 weeks into my humiliation. I was processing invoice records, mind-numbing work Tom had specifically assigned to help me understand the fundamentals, when I noticed the pattern. A series of payments to shell companies, all approved by Mark's digital signature, all just under the threshold requiring board review. At first, I thought it was my exhausted mind playing tricks. But the more I dug, the clearer it became. Vendor companies that existed only on paper, consulting fees for services never rendered, marketing expenses for campaigns that never ran, millions of dollars bleeding out through carefully orchestrated channels. Harrison Dynamics wasn't just toxic, it was corrupt. I started staying late, volunteering for the work nobody wanted. Database cleanup gave me access to historical records. Expense report processing showed me the paper trail. Everyone thought I was broken, desperately trying to prove myself worthy of redemption. In reality, I was building a case. The IT department became my unexpected sanctuary. Lucas, a 25-year-old developer who lived on energy drinks and resentment, worked the night shift. He'd been passed over for promotion 3 times, watching less qualified but better connected colleagues leap over him. "Working late again, Rachel?" He found me in the 3rd-floor break room at midnight, making my 5th cup of coffee. "Just trying to stay busy," I replied, noticing the defeat in his eyes matched mine. Yeah, I heard about what they did to you. Total bullshit. He slumped into a chair. Mark's nephew just got promoted to senior developer. Kid can barely code a login page. We sat in silence, two casualties of the same war. You know, Lucas said eventually, nobody really monitors the audit logs after hours, system access, file downloads, that kind of thing. It is supposed to review them, but... He shrugged. Who has time, right? Our eyes met, understanding passed between us. That sounds like a serious security oversight, I said carefully. Massive one. Someone could theoretically access all kinds of historical data. Financial records, contracts, emails even. The system keeps everything for 7 years. That's concerning. Very. He stood up, paused at the door. I usually take my break from 1 to 2 a.m. Computers logged in but unattended. Would be terrible if someone used that window to breach protocol. He left. I waited 5 minutes, then followed. Lucas's workstation was a goldmine. His admin credentials opened doors that had been slammed in my face. Email archives, contract databases, financial records, 7 years of Harrison Dynamics secrets laid bare. What I found was staggering. The shell companies were just the beginning. Inflated revenue reports to investors, backdated contracts to hit quarterly targets, client data sold to competitors through intermediaries. And at the center of it all, Mark Halstead's digital signature, his email approvals, his authorized passwords. But Mark wasn't stupid. Everything had plausible deniability. Each individual piece could be explained away. I needed something undeniable, something that would burn through corporate protection like acid. I found it in the legal department's files. Jennifer Walsh, senior legal counsel, had been building her own insurance policy. Hidden in nested folders labeled personal development were copies of every questionable deal. Every borderline illegal maneuver, every communication where Mark and the leadership team explicitly discussed covering up their activities. She'd been documenting everything, protecting herself for the day it all came crashing down. Jennifer and I had history. 2 years ago, I'd warned her about Mark's interest in her. She'd laughed it off until the Christmas party, when Mark cornered her in the parking garage. Security cameras mysteriously malfunctioned that night, but I'd been there, witnessed it, walked her to her car. She'd never reported it. Mark had made clear what happened to women who misunderstood friendly conversation. I printed key documents late at night when the floor was empty, using different printers across multiple floors. Built encrypted digital copies on thumb drives I hid in tampon boxes, the one place male executives would never look. Created a timeline linking every fraudulent transaction to specific board meetings and decisions. The investigation consumed me. Days became automated. Smile, nod, process invoices, accept Tom's condescension. Nights became everything. Documenting, cross-referencing, building an airtight case that would destroy them all. My allies revealed themselves slowly. Roberto, the janitor, started leaving certain office doors unlocked during his rounds. Forgot to check that lock, he'd mutter, winking. Patricia, Mark's assistant, began, accidentally, leaving confidential meeting notes on the printer. So careless of me, she'd say, loud enough for me to hear. We were all the walking wounded, the stepped on, the discarded, but we were also still here, inside the machine, invisible to those who'd dismissed us. The most damning evidence came from an unexpected source, Mark's own hubris. He'd been using his corporate card for personal expenses, then bearing them in project budgets. Vegas trips labeled as client entertainment for clients who didn't exist. A yacht rental classified as team building for a team that was never assembled. A $50,000 payment to a woman named Brittany Chen, not for consulting services as claimed, but to settle a sexual harassment complaint that never officially existed. I had them. Not just Mark, but the entire leadership team who'd signed off on these fabrications. David Brennan, our CEO, whose signature appeared on the fraudulent investor reports. The CFO who'd certified cooked books. The board members who'd ignored whistleblower complaints in exchange for inflated bonuses. But evidence without strategy is just paper. I needed to deploy this information like a surgical strike. Precise, overwhelming, irreversible. One shot to bring down the entire tower. I started with the clients. Anonymous emails from untraceable accounts, warning them about service disruptions, suggesting they review their contracts. Seeds of doubt that would bloom into departure notices. Then the employees. Subtle leaks about coming layoffs, about executive bonuses while staff faced cuts. Morale, already low, plummeted. The best talent started updating resumes, taking interviews. The foundation was weakening. But the real plan, the killing blow, would require perfect timing and a media spectacle they'd never see coming. I had the evidence. I had the allies. I had nothing left to lose. What I also had was patience. They'd taught me about power, about knowing my place. Time to show them I'd learned my lesson perfectly. The plan crystallized over 6 weeks of meticulous preparation. Every document needed verification. Every trail required double-checking. Every piece of evidence had to be bulletproof. I wasn't just going to wound Harrison Dynamics, I was going to perform a public execution. The key was timing. Q4 earnings were approaching, the season when Harrison Dynamics traditionally courted investors for the next fiscal year. Stock prices peaked, bonuses were calculated, new contracts were signed. The company would be at its most vulnerable, its lies most exposed. I divided my evidence into 3 packages. The first would go to the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. The second to the FBI's white-collar crime division. The third, and most important, to Amanda Rodriguez at the Wall Street Journal, an investigative journalist who'd been sniffing around tech company fraud for years. But I needed one more thing, a trigger. Something that would make them panic, make mistakes, reveal themselves. I found it in the Goldman Sachs contract Mark had insisted was guaranteed. Using Lucas's access, I drafted an email from a spoofed address that looked nearly identical to Goldman's procurement director. The message was simple, concerns about Harrison's financial stability, requesting an urgent review of all documentation before renewal. I scheduled it to arrive Monday morning during the weekly leadership meeting. That weekend, I met Amanda Rodriguez at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park, far from downtown's corporate surveillance. She was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You're taking a massive risk," she said, reviewing my evidence. "Whistleblower protection only goes so far." "I'm already destroyed. What else can they take?" She studied me. "Your freedom. If they make this about theft of corporate documents, your future. If they paint you as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge. Is that what you think this is? Revenge? No." She pulled out her recorder. "I think this is justice, but I need to hear your story. All of it. On record." For 3 hours, I talked, every detail, every humiliation, every discovery. Amanda's questions were surgical, finding gaps, pushing for specifics. By the end, she was smiling. "This is it. This is the story that breaks them." She paused. "But once we publish, there's no going back. You'll be the woman who brought down Harrison Dynamics. That follows you forever." Good. Monday arrived like a lit fuse. At 9:15 a.m., as the leadership team gathered in their ivory tower, the fake Goldman email landed. By 9:30, Mark was screaming at his assistant. By 10, an emergency audit was ordered. I volunteered to help with the audit, playing the eager employee seeking redemption. Tom, thrilled to dump work on me, gave me access to compile client communications. Perfect cover for my final evidence gathering. The panic was beautiful to watch. Mark demanded all hands on deck to prepare Goldman retention materials. The CFO ordered finance to review and adjust any problematic numbers. Legal went into overdrive, shredding documents they thought were dangerous while preserving ones I knew were damning. Jennifer Walsh approached me Tuesday afternoon, her face pale. "Rachel, I need to ask you something. Off the record." We walked to the parking garage, away from cameras and witnesses. Did you send that Goldman email? I kept my face neutral. Why would I have access to Goldman's systems? She studied me. That's not a denial. It's not a confession either. She was quiet for a moment. They're scared. Mark's been moving money all morning. Personal accounts. The kind of movements people make when they're planning to run. Interesting. Rachel. She looked around nervously. If someone were to, hypothetically, have documented evidence of financial crimes, when would be the optimal time to release it? Hypothetically, when the subjects are most distracted, when they're making mistakes, when they think they're handling one crisis and can't imagine another. She nodded slowly. The earnings call is Thursday. That would be terrible timing for any revelations. Terrible, she agreed. Then, quieter. There's a second set of books. Real numbers. Mark keeps them on a private server he thinks nobody knows about. How do you know? Because I helped set it up. Before I knew what he was. She handed me a piece of paper with server credentials. I was never here. Wednesday night, I made my final moves. The SEC submission went through their online portal at 11:47 p.m. The FBI package was hand-delivered to their Chicago field office after midnight. Amanda's story was filed, ready for Thursday morning's edition. I then used Jennifer's credentials to access Mark's private server. The real books were there, every crime documented in his own meticulous records. His hubris was complete. He'd actually kept a detailed log of every bribe, every kickback, every fraudulent transaction. Probably as insurance against his co-conspirators. I downloaded everything, then did something extra. Using Mark's logged-in session, I transferred copies to every Harrison Dynamics board member's email, scheduled for delivery at 9 a.m. Thursday. Subject line: Real financial records. Urgent review required. My final act was an all-staff email from an anonymous account, attaching a brief summary of the evidence and a link to Amanda's upcoming article. Scheduled for 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes before the board would see the full truth. Thursday morning, I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, the one I'd worn when I still mattered. I made coffee, sat at my pathetic cubicle, and waited. 8:45 a.m., the all-staff email landed. Gasps rippled across the floor like dominoes. 9 a.m., board members' phones started exploding. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see David Brennan's face drain of color. 9:15 a.m., the Wall Street Journal article went live. Harrison Dynamics fraud, an inside look at systematic corruption. 9:30 a.m., trading was halted on Harrison Dynamics stock. 9:45 a.m., FBI agents entered the building. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Mark was arrested at his desk, handcuffed in front of the entire office. David Brennan tried to flee but was intercepted in the parking garage. The CFO collapsed and had to be taken out on a stretcher. Tom found me at my cubicle an hour later, his face ghost white. You did this? It wasn't a question. Did what, Tom? I've been right here, processing invoices and learning humility, just like you taught me. You destroyed everything. No. I stood, gathering my personal items. I just revealed what was already rotten. Consider it a lesson in data accuracy. Security arrived to escort me out, standard procedure during federal investigations. As I walked through the office one last time, employees stood and applauded. Not everyone, but enough. The wounded, the overlooked, the discarded. They clapped for one of their own who'd finally fought back. At the elevator, Patricia pressed something into my hand. A USB drive. More evidence, she whispered. For the civil suits that are coming. Make sure they lose everything. The first ripple hit within hours of the article going live. Harrison Dynamics stock plummeted 40% before trading was halted. CNBC picked up the story by noon. By evening, it was trending on every financial platform. Tech giant's spectacular fraud exposed by whistleblower became the headline that defined the news cycle. I watched from my apartment, fielding calls from reporters, SEC investigators, and FBI agents. My lawyer, provided pro bono by a whistleblower advocacy group, had advised me to stay visible but careful. "You're protected legally," she said, "but public opinion is your real shield now." The panic inside Harrison Dynamics was delicious to observe from afar. Lucas kept me updated through encrypted messages. "Mass exodus," he wrote. "Entire departments walking out. It is down to skeleton crew. Servers crashing because nobody knows how to maintain them." By Friday afternoon, the contagion spread to clients. Goldman Sachs, ironically, was the first to publicly terminate their contract, citing breach of trust and fiduciary responsibility. Within 24 hours, 6 more major clients followed. Each departure was another nail in Harrison's coffin. The emergency board meeting was leaked live by someone still inside. I watched Mark, hauled back from federal custody for the meeting, try to shift blame onto everyone else. Rachel Morgan orchestrated this, he insisted. She planted evidence, manipulated data. Board member Charles Whitman cut him off. "The FBI confirmed the evidence is legitimate. Your own records, Mark, your personal server. She must have fabricated your passwords, your digital signatures, your emails discussing," and I quote, "keeping the real numbers where the feds will never look." "Are you claiming she fabricated those too?" Mark's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. He fell silent. David Brennan tried damage control. "We can weather this. We've survived scandals before." "Not like this." Whitman's voice was ice. "The SEC is freezing assets. The FBI is seizing records. We're facing hundreds of millions in fines, plus criminal charges. Harrison Dynamics is finished." Monday brought the second wave. Amanda Rodriguez published her follow-up, "The Culture of Corruption: How Harrison Dynamics Silenced Whistleblowers." The article featured testimonies from 17 former employees, all describing similar patterns of retaliation, harassment, and termination for questioning leadership. Jennifer Walsh went on record about Mark's sexual harassment, providing dates, times, and witnesses. 3 more women came forward with similar stories. The narrative shifted from financial fraud to systematic abuse of power. Tuesday's mail brought an unexpected package. Inside was a single champagne flute and a note. "From those still fighting inside, thank you for showing us how." The third floor. The SEC moved faster than expected. Wednesday morning, they announced formal charges against 14 Harrison executives. The list read like a who's who of my tormentors. Mark faced 23 counts of securities fraud, David Brennan, 18 counts. Even Tom Martinez made the list. Apparently, his incompetence had extended to signing off on falsified reports without reading them. But the sweetest moment came Thursday afternoon. A call from an unknown number. "Rachel? It's Jennifer Walsh." "Jennifer, are you okay?" "Better than okay. I just got off the phone with the prosecutor. Full immunity in exchange for my testimony and documentation. They say my evidence alone guarantees convictions." "That's wonderful." "There's more. I've been approached by 3 firms about heading their compliance departments. Turns out, taking down corruption is a valuable skill set." "You deserve it." "No, Rachel. You deserve it. You gave us all courage." Mark's in custody, his assets frozen. His wife filed for divorce this morning, the house, the cars, the country club membership, all gone. After we hung up, I sat in silence. The apartment was boxes and bare walls now. I'd been packing for a smaller place, expecting financial struggle. Instead, my phone rang again. "Ms. Morgan, this is Robert Sterling from Sterling & Associates. We specialize in whistleblower cases. The SEC bounty for your information will be substantial, likely 15 to 20% of the recovered funds. Based on preliminary estimates, you're looking at 8 figures minimum." 8 figures. More money than I'd ever imagined having. Additionally, he continued, multiple firms have reached out about potential positions. Your actions have marked you as someone with uncompromising integrity. That's surprisingly rare in corporate America. That evening, I walked past Harrison Dynamics one last time. The building was surrounded by news vans. Federal agents carried boxes of evidence through the lobby. The company logo was already being removed from the facade, leaving ghost letters on the glass. Roberto was smoking by the service entrance. He saw me and smiled. Ms. Rachel, heard you're a hero now. Just someone who got pushed too far. No. He shook his head. You're wrong. Every day, people get pushed too far. They quit, they break, they accept it. You? You pushed back. That makes you something special. A black town car pulled up. Mark Halstead emerged in handcuffs, being transferred between federal facilities. He saw me standing there. Our eyes met across 30 feet of sidewalk. He looked broken, suit wrinkled, hair unkempt. That commanding presence reduced to nothing. For a moment, I saw him search for words, perhaps an insult, a threat, maybe even an apology. Instead, he just stared, seeming to finally understand the magnitude of his miscalculation. He'd thought he was teaching me about power. Instead, he'd taught me how to destroy it. The agents loaded him into the car. As it pulled away, I noticed something in the lobby. My old nameplate, the one from my manager office, sitting in a box of items to be discarded. I didn't retrieve it. Rachel Morgan, strategic accounts manager, was dead. She'd been murdered in a conference room overlooking Lake Michigan, but from her ashes, something else had risen. Someone who understood that sometimes the greatest revenge isn't just survival. It's ensuring your enemies don't. My phone buzzed. Amanda Rodriguez. Second article just hit 5 million views. Publishers are calling about a book deal. Interested in telling the full story? I typed back, yes, let's burn it all down. As I walked away from Harrison Dynamics for the last time, I thought about Mark's words during my demotion. Welcome to the real world, Rachel. He was right. This was the real world, a world where actions have consequences, where corruption can be exposed, where sometimes, just sometimes, the little guy wins. He'd wanted to teach me a lesson about knowing my place. Lesson learned. My place was standing on the ashes of everything he'd built. The congressional hearing was scheduled for Friday morning, exactly 2 weeks after the story broke. C-SPAN would broadcast it live. The entire financial world would be watching. But first, there was one more card to play. Thursday night, I met with Amanda Rodriguez one final time before the hearing. We sat in her office, surrounded by boxes of evidence, transcripts, and documents that would reshape corporate accountability laws. The Times wants to run this tonight, she said, holding up her laptop. The final piece. Are you ready for this? On her screen was the article that would destroy any remaining sympathy for Harrison's leadership. The Suicide Files. How Harrison Dynamics drove employees to desperation. 3 employees had taken their lives over the past 2 years. All had filed complaints about workplace abuse. All had been terminated shortly after. Their families had been paid off with NDAs, their deaths scrubbed from corporate memory. But Patricia had saved everything. Emails, security footage, termination letters dated before the supposed performance issues that justified their firing. Run it, I said. The article went live at midnight. By 3 a.m., Harrison Dynamics' remaining investors pulled out completely. The stock price, when markets opened, would hit 0. Total collapse in under 2 weeks. Friday morning arrived gray and cold. The Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs had called this emergency hearing on corporate corruption and whistleblower protection in the digital age. I was the star witness. The hearing room was packed, media, corporate executives, advocacy groups, all waiting to see the woman who'd brought down a giant. Mark would testify too, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. But he was scheduled after me. They wanted my truth first. Senator Patricia Williams opened the proceedings. Ms. Morgan, you've been called a hero by some, a traitor by others. How do you see yourself? I leaned into the microphone. I see myself as someone who was taught a lesson about power and learned it perfectly. For the next 2 hours, I laid out everything, not just the fraud, but the system that enabled it, the casual cruelty, the protection of predators, the destruction of anyone who questioned authority. I named names, cited documents, provided evidence that would fuel investigations for years. Mr. Halstead claimed he was teaching me about knowing my place, I said, looking directly at the cameras. He was right. My place was standing up to corruption. My place was protecting the employees who couldn't protect themselves. My place was ensuring that power without accountability has consequences. Senator Williams asked, "What would you say to other potential whistleblowers watching today?" Document everything, build your case carefully, protect yourself legally, and remember, they want you to be afraid. Fear is how they maintain control. But they should fear you more, because you know their secrets. When Mark took the stand, he was a shadow of his former self. His attorney had clearly coached him to show remorse, to play the victim of a complex system. But under cross-examination, his arrogance cracked through. Ms. Morgan deliberately sabotaged Harrison Dynamics out of personal vendetta, he insisted. Senator Williams destroyed him with a single question. Mr. Halstead, if Ms. Morgan fabricated this evidence, can you explain why your personal banking records, subpoenaed yesterday, show deposits matching exactly the amount stolen from Harrison Dynamics? His attorney whispered frantically. Mark took the fifth. The hearing concluded with Senator Williams announcing new legislation, the Morgan Act, strengthening whistleblower protections and requiring personal criminal liability for executives who retaliate against employees reporting corruption. As I left the hearing room, a crowd had gathered outside. Former Harrison employees, workers from other companies, people who'd been crushed by corporate machinery. They weren't cheering or applauding. They were simply standing, bearing witness, showing solidarity. Lucas was there, wearing a suit for the first time I'd ever seen. Got hired by the FBI, he said. Cyber Crimes Division. Thanks to you, my skills suddenly matter more than my connections. Jennifer Walsh stood with a group of women, all wearing pins that said, "Believe whistleblowers." She nodded at me, a gesture worth more than words. Even Roberto was there, still in his janitor uniform. You did it, Ms. Rachel. You really did it? That afternoon, the final domino fell. Harrison Dynamics filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Complete liquidation. 10,000 employees would lose their jobs. But the bankruptcy court would prioritize their compensation over executive golden parachutes. The building would be sold. The company would cease to exist. I received a call from an unknown number that evening. David Brennan's voice, calling from federal detention. I hope you're satisfied, he said. You destroyed everything we built. No, David. You destroyed it when you built it on lies. I just showed everyone the foundation was rotten. Do you have any idea how many people you've hurt? The employees? The shareholders? The employees you were planning to lay off anyway? The shareholders you were defrauding? Don't pretend this is about anyone but yourselves. Silence. Then, quieter. Why didn't you just leave? Take a severance, sign an NDA, move on? Because Mark wanted to teach me a lesson about power, and I'm an excellent student. I hung up. There was nothing more to say. That night, my mom called. She'd seen the hearing. Honey, I just watched you on TV. You were incredible. But are you okay? Really okay? For the first time in months, I could answer honestly. Yes, Mom, I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm free. The book advance came through the next week. 7 figures, with a documentary deal in negotiation. Job offers flooded in from companies wanting someone who'd proven incorruptible. Speaking engagements, consulting opportunities, a chance to reshape corporate culture from positions of real authority. But first, I had one last visit to make. The federal detention center was cold and sterile. Mark sat across from me, separated by reinforced glass. He looked 20 years older, the weight of 23 federal charges aging him rapidly. Come to gloat? He asked. No, come to return something you gave me. I placed my hand on the glass. The lesson, about knowing my place, about how power works, about who matters and who doesn't. His jaw clenched. And thank you. It was the most valuable education I ever received. You taught me that power without accountability is vulnerable, that arrogance creates blind spots, that those you step on while climbing up are perfectly positioned to destroy the ladder. You think you've won. I know I have. You're facing 30 years minimum. Your assets are gone. Your reputation is destroyed. Your name will forever be synonymous with corporate corruption. Harrison Dynamics is dead. Your entire world has collapsed. I stood to leave, then turned back. Oh, and Mark? That lesson you wanted to teach me about knowing my place? I finally understand it. My place is wherever I choose to stand. And I choose to stand on the grave of everything you built. 6 months later, I stood outside what used to be Harrison Dynamics. The building had been sold to a nonprofit focused on helping startup entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. The irony was delicious. A monument to corporate greed transformed into an incubator for those the old system would have excluded. The logo was gone, replaced by simple letters, the Phoenix Center for Ethical Business. They'd offered me a position on the board. I accepted. The trials had concluded faster than expected. Mark Halstead, 27 years federal prison, no possibility of parole for 15. David Brennan, 18 years. Tom Martinez, 5 years and a lifetime ban from serving as a corporate officer. 14 other executives received sentences ranging from 2 to 12 years. The SEC settlement was historic, $847 million in recovered funds. My whistleblower award, $127 million. More money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. Most of it went into a foundation for protecting corporate whistleblowers and supporting employees facing retaliation. But the real satisfaction wasn't in the money or the vindication. It was in the changes. The Morgan Act passed unanimously. Companies across the country scrambled to implement real accountability measures. Business schools added mandatory ethics courses using Harrison Dynamics as a case study in institutional failure. I kept some reminders, not trophies, but warnings. A photo of my old cubicle, that 6x6 box they'd tried to break me in. Mark's coffee mug, left behind in his final, frantic evacuation. I used it as a pen holder. The strategic reorganization email announcing my demotion, framed on my wall as a reminder that humiliation can be fuel if you let it burn right. Amanda Rodriguez's book about the case hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. The documentary premiered at Sundance. Both ended the same way, with me walking away from that federal detention center after confronting Mark, free and unbroken. But the story wasn't really over. It never is. Last week, I received an email from a young woman at a Fortune 500 company. She'd discovered financial irregularities, faced retaliation, been demoted. The same old song with new verses. She wanted advice. I met her at the same coffee shop where I'd first given Amanda the evidence. She was 26, brilliant, scared, and furious in equal measure. She reminded me of myself before I learned the lesson. They think they've destroyed me, she said, hands shaking around her coffee cup. Good, I replied. Let them think that. Wounded prey doesn't attract attention. But document everything. Build your case. Find your allies among the invisible, the assistants, the IT staff, the janitors. They see everything and they remember who treats them as human. And then? Then you teach them the lesson they tried to teach you. That power isn't about titles or corner offices. It's about truth. And truth is the one thing they can't survive. She left with a recorder, encrypted USB drives, and my direct number. The cycle continues. But now with infrastructure, support, and precedent, people ask if I have regrets, if I feel guilty about the innocent employees who lost their jobs when Harrison collapsed. The answer is complex. I regret that good people suffered. But Harrison Dynamics was a cancer. You don't cure cancer by being gentle. You cut it out, burn it away, and accept that healthy tissue will be damaged in the process. The alternative is letting it metastasize until it kills everything. Do I feel bad for Mark? For David? For the executives serving time? No. They had every opportunity to choose differently, to treat people with dignity, to run an honest business, to reward merit over connections. They chose exploitation, corruption, and cruelty. They created the very weapon that destroyed them, me. Standing in my new office, I'd joined a consulting firm specializing in corporate ethics and compliance. I looked out at the Chicago skyline. Harrison Dynamics' former building gleamed in the afternoon sun, reborn as something better. It was a Tuesday, 3 p.m. Somewhere, in some conference room, another Mark Halstead was probably humiliating another employee, thinking he was teaching them a lesson about knowing their place. He should be afraid, because that employee might be taking notes, building a case, learning the real lesson, that every tyrant creates their own executioner. Every corrupt system plants the seeds of its own destruction. Every time they push someone down to teach them a lesson, they risk creating someone like me, someone who learns the lesson too well, someone who teaches it back with interest. I turned away from the window and opened my laptop. 17 new emails from potential whistleblowers across the country. Each one a lit match looking for kindling. Each one a possible ending to another corrupt empire. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucas, now a senior FBI investigator. New case. Another tech company, bigger than Harrison. You interested in consulting? I smiled and typed back. Always. After all, I learned from the best teachers. The truth is, they did teach me a lesson. About power, about resilience, about the danger of underestimating someone with nothing left to lose. They wanted to break me, to make me small, to put me in my place. Instead, they created their own destroyer. Mark Halstead wanted to teach me humility. He taught me rage. David Brennan wanted to teach me compliance. He taught me rebellion. Tom Martinez wanted to teach me hierarchy. He taught me how to demolish it. They wanted to teach me a lesson. They succeeded beyond their wildest nightmares. Because I learned that lesson, I perfected it. And then I turned it into a masterclass in destruction that business schools will study for decades. They demoted me to teach me a lesson. I taught them one instead. And I'm not done teaching. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Rachel's position? Have you ever faced workplace injustice? Let's discuss in the comments. Your support means everything. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is massive success.